Part 1. Learning. It had to begin like this. A crow was trapped in the Clean Time corporate office kitchen for 6 months. No human knew where the crow came from, and most thought it was an unclaimed office prank. The crow had a noticeably shorter right wing. He was called Right Side. Right Side was trying to fly between the rows of buildings on 3rd and 4th Avenue when he veered off course, which was typical of his deformity. He missed his prey often and was underweight, able to only scavenge scraps he found on the ground. The wind was pushing him too close to the buildings, and he found himself sickeningly reflected in the glass. He braced for impact. Yet, there was no crash, no sudden halt in momentum. The crow passed through the reflective, false sky as though ascending to heaven. The windows were all open. The 3rd floor of the Clean Time offices stank like fermented body odor. That week, an employee had left a container of Euro meat and white sauce on her desk near a bright 3rd floor window. She had been on vacation 4 days before they smelled it. 6 days before, gagging, they found it. Right Side ate a trail of croissant debris he found on an entry rug. There wasn't a human in sight, all on the 4th floor for the Monday status meeting. Beyond the croissant was a sliver of prosciutto, then a fist-sized wheat cracker. Then, Right Side caught a whiff of the stench that had gagged all the employees. He yearned. It emanated from a glass room with gleaming chrome fixtures. Right Side entered the kitchen and found the Euro meat still boiling in the trash can. The wayward crow feasted until the intern Giovanni came down mid-meeting to collect mineral waters for the executives. Seeing the crow amidst the trash, Giovanni shrieked in his excessive Italian way and slammed the glass door on the bird. The fate of every crow was sealed in that Italian scream. When the meeting was over, the 3rd floor workers returned to their kitchen to see if what Giovanni said was true. Protected by the sliding glass partition, the crow recoiled at their white-eyed stares, their wormy fingers pointing in the air, their beakless mouths flapping wet and noisy. That afternoon, the manager emailed a gently worded complaint to the division president. The president convinced himself the email was misspelled or a weird joke and demanded proof. The manager and the staff spent the rest of the afternoon taking poorly lit photos through the reflective glass on cell phone cameras. They received a simple 2-word response: better photo. When the next email arrived, the president deleted it without reading. It was easier to ignore the 3rd floor. There was a kitchen on the 6th floor, too. Through study, Right Side came to understand the humans' daily patterns. They entered the building in the morning. They congregated for 3 hours at desks and took turns every 5 minutes to leave for a room filled with running water. Midday, they left the building and returned with food, which sat in the fridge 3 days before being thrown away. Seeing these crumbs and whole crusts of bread, and one afternoon, an entire discarded pizza slice, inspired Right Side to open the sliding glass door. He spent hours clawing at the glass, wedging his beak into the gap. It was a pepperoni pizza. He ate like a king. Right Side mourned when the humans disappeared entirely for 2 days. The bird imagined they had died or migrated. Thus, it puzzled the bird when they returned, as though having never left, taking up their hourly routines precisely where they left off. They did the same routine for 5 days, then left for 2, then did it all again. Right Side witnessed this until it stopped puzzling him, and instead, he too began to function in this multiple-day pattern. He stayed in the kitchen during working hours, left during the lunch hour to scavenge croissants, then did the same at night with burritos and acai bowls. During the 2-day interim, Right Side had stored enough food to cut loose and engage in personal projects. He learned to use a hole-strewn yellow Chinese food bag during his raids, and adeptly stuffed crusts into some of the holes, meat crumbs and french fries into others, and water into the unperforated end. He dragged the trawling line of precious goods by a foot, row by row, through filthy cubicles. 6 months passed, and people forgot the bird existed. Then one day, as the division president guided a tour of clients on the 3rd floor, he saw Rightside arranging his harvest against the glass kitchen walls. He screamed at the manager until his face was wet. That afternoon, a pest control expert opened the glass door of the kitchen, fought the bird into a cage, and released it to the city streets. The damage was already done. The bird worked for the weekend. Part 2. Application. Where once Rightside was underfed and incapable, now he was an easy victor. He did his hunting outside restaurants, office buildings, anywhere humans gathered. He could be seen on Broadway or 3rd with a ratty plastic bag about his foot, stuffing it with goods pilfered from streets and the back doors of kitchens. When adventure struck him, he chased caterers and stole dumped goods. One day, he shat on a takeout order, the next on an all-beef sausage, claiming each prize from the nearest trash or curb. He was becoming a farmer true, economically using self-made manure for his harvest. Soon, the other crows took notice. What had happened to Rightside? Why hadn't it happened to them? As they hunted all day for insects and fought for worms, Rightside only worked at noon and dusk, and every 5 days he took 2 off. When Rightside married a crow bride and sired crow chicks plumper and stronger than any other hatchlings, crows began to reluctantly imitate. In weeks, a dozen crows could be seen flying with plastic bags caught in their talons. Though often it didn't mean a feast, the birds could farm enough food to last a weekend and enjoyed their first tastes of leisure. Bird husbands turned to bird wives on Saturday mornings and cawed about where to go, what to do. The whole day is ours, they'd caw, caw, caw. It was a seeming natural fluke when human couples strolling about Median Park saw whole trees of crows. Mating season, sweetheart, men would guess, desperate to appear as an expert. But it was worth a chuckle, nothing more. Birds were parallel citizens of the city, their expressways stretching in humanless gaps between skyscrapers, nestled on roofs or queuing on power lines. You could forget they existed. This tolerance did not last. Within a year, every crow in the city was farming in Rightside's manner. On the weekend, they had fun. Bird fun, however, did not occupy a separate parallel plane of the cityscape. The demands of leisure are more or less the same across species lines. Creatures like to relax, enjoy nature, eat to excess, and fornicate. The destinations were the same. Human couples no longer pointed and laughed at trees full of birds, but recoiled, ears covered, shielding hairdos from squirts of feces. In Median Park, every tree was full, and the squawking sounded like a storm of falling knives. But the storm only lasted the weekend. Every weekend. Restaurants had it worst of all. Crows gathered outside kitchen exits, front entrances, waiting for a door to swing open, and then flap, flap, dozens of birds would beat customers to the hostess. They didn't give a name and wait 30 to 40 minutes for mimosa and a pork belly egg benedict. They pillaged. The emergency clinics were a mess of scratches, fractures, and ingested fecal matter. Rightside, in his newfound splendor, stopped flying. If he wanted to visit his writhing hatchlings in some burrow or other, he sat in a harness of plastic bags of choice colors: Seatown green, Billy's grocery white, Randy's Chinese yellow. A staff of 6 crows then grasped the plastic in their talons and bore him through the air. Rightside had swelled from luxury. The tiniest infraction from his staff earned a disappointed stare down or a grisly stab of beak. Unless, that is, it was the weekend. Rightside was happier on the weekend. Despite the bird hordes, humans refused to abandon their restaurants. Simply shooting the birds wasn't practical in the densely populated city, so instead, municipal exterminators tried mixing poisoned goods among the healthy in the food carts, but the raiding murderers sniffed them out. Falcons were trained to attack crows from the sky, but in time they too learned leisure, and their ranks abandoned the human race. These were not the birds the poets wrote about. Humans who once compared their souls or the Holy Spirit or freedom itself to a flappy bird were now disgusted by the creatures. They watched these new birds and recognized, if only subconsciously, the shame of themselves. For the first time, humans realized the unique, deliberate hatred they reserved for other humans had spread to a novel recipient. It was a breakthrough. Gosh, humans said, this wasn't so hard to solve after all. Part 3. A familiar solution. In his luxury nest, Rightside was watching birds fornicate for scraps of pizza crust when the package arrived. It was carried by a messenger pigeon, utilizing Rightside's patented plastic strap, for which he earned 20 crumbs on the crust for each sale. Rightside was intrigued, but not invested. The fornication was just picking up. "Cuckoo!" he moaned to his steward. A crow servant began to unwrap the beautiful bundle, a handsome burgundy plastic bag of orgasmic crinkles scented with sex pheromones. As the plastic ripped free, Rightside's attention waned from the carnal display and waxed to the package. He shrieked dully, cry muffled by his bloated larynx. It was a delicacy befitting such a bird of refined taste. A sun-toasted croissant, flaky and drizzled with a blood and beetle puree of enchanting colors. Oh, the red, the lavender, the hyper-maroon and ultra-crimson. The bands of vibrancy crisscrossed in delicate patterns. The dessert tempted the whole bird court like the beautiful egg of a god bird they wanted to eat. Caught off guard by the pleasurable crinkling, the seductive aroma, the fornicating paused so the court could react to the package. "Creak, crow, creak, creak, cree!" delighted a bird dressed in motley. "Cram, cram, squeeze, crank!" honked a crow at the base of the fornication pyramid. Even the slave crow wished for a taste. As Rightside waddled thunderously to his prize, the slave crow made a jealous "coo-crow," which infuriated Rightside. Servants were supposed to be silent. "Cree! Rightside screamed. "Cree, crimshaw! Scrimshaw!" He spoke in the high crow tongue he invented, haughty even in his ridicule. He hocked a hot, acidic kernel of shrimp toast into his gullet and vomited on the lowly bird. "Scrimshaw!" Rightside wiped his beak on the slave crow's balding forehead. Satisfied, he approached the delivered treat and took a hearty bite. Rightside had never eaten such delicacy. Oh God, the hot crispy flakes, the blood jam filling, and best of all, somehow, magically, delightfully, erotically, every morsel was flavored like crow egg yolk. It was dessert and childhood and the eggy smell of a mother crow's mystery privates all in one. He ate it until he was like to burst, and the other crows watched in envy. What Rightside did not know was that in elaborate, expensive nest mansions across the city, every other high-ranking crow was tormenting their court with similar gluttonous displays. Rightside, as well as the other elite crows in Grand Estuary City, all made the same demand upon consumption. More! More! Rightside himself, carried by half a murderer, tracked down the crow messenger. The messenger did not know who had sent the packages, but after a vicious series of stabbings, he did volunteer the pickup location. On a wooden, pheromone-tinged altar within a shaded, watered portico on the side of a modest building, waited another divinely wrapped treat. Right side tore into it, eating the plastic, the pastry, the puree, all of it. Oh, God. And then a little flap in the adjoining wall opened. Another treat slid through. Right side flapped his tongue outside his mouth, crow eyes creased in ecstasy. He didn't have to do a goddamn thing. Just show up, stand at a window, and receive the bounty of bird pleasure in a consummate sinful treat. Then Longlegs and his posse flew to the dispensary window. They too had tracked down the messenger. This was the bird who stole Right Side's designs for a new plastic strap, a filthy imitator. The villainous bird in his court landed, pushing Right Side and his minions to the side. Another crow treat slid down the chute, and Right Side began hocking up bits of paper and hot, phlegmy pastry. Scream, Shah! Inside, the researchers, with a collaboration of the Private Business League and the Federal Bureau of Horticulture, clapped hands together and hooted almost as loud as the birds. Cameras recorded the feed and piped it in for humanity's amusement. As birds tore feathers from breasts, clawed out eyes, and gave lives for luxury, humans knew the problem was solved. Years later, when the crows, falcons, pigeons, and even a couple species of bats were all dead, they made a movie about it all. They cast an illiterate with a bland face but bright eyes in the lead role. In the movie, he led a team to heroically consider the birds as advanced as humans, and used this fresh perspective to wipe them out in one fell swoop. Of course, the film had to simplify the ending. For example, the croissant treat was simply poisoned, a direct attack. Humans won by cleverly killing every high-profile bird to upend their society. In reality, the treats were simply delicious. Addictive, perhaps, but what is good that isn't? The birds fought for access, and in the end, Right Side and his superior staff won the day. They controlled the chute, but never made a profit. Right Side gorged himself on the surplus until there was no surplus, and the crow's belly was only striped with feathers, skin so distended. He grew sick, and after dying, his empire fell. More birds had the treats until they preferred it over any other food. For years, the streets were full of half-starved crows loopy on the hallucinogenic effects of the egg yolk flavor compound. The following deaths were more like the exterminations of old, panicky creatures in metal lassos, caged and gassed. The numbers dropped gradually until there were just 2 crows left, Tingle's and Left Side, Right Side's ill-favored son. They lived in the Median Park Zoo, where old folks would point, read from a placard, and tell their children about when the birds learned about weekends. The terror they recounted: we didn't eat in restaurants for a whole year. The 2 lone survivors bulged with ingested plastic. Their breasts were wrapped in white bags matted with feces, and they yelled at the onlookers. Scream, Shaw! No one noticed when they died. This story must be